So Clive DeCarl here, another edition of the Health Revolution. And today I'm joined by the two Steves, the two Stephens, and Stephen number one.
Yeah.
And Stephen number two. And yeah, I think they're probably the fun guy twins.
Yeah, we are fun. Yeah, we're fun to be around.
Exactly. So for the last few months, I've had the pleasure of dealing with these two gentlemen, and I would suggest that what we've been looking at is what you might say a form of alchemy. And the first time I tried this first product that we're bringing to the market, I was impressed because I actually felt something. Now, normally, I'm one of these people, well, give me 6 and I might notice. But I actually noticed with 1, which is quite unusual. And I actually suggested that maybe it didn't need to be as potent as it was. And the next person I gave it to said the same. So we've been adjusting the dose. And now I think we're at a level of absolute perfection where all our people who've been trying it so far, everybody seems to like it. And some people have had some really specific positive events. I would think the one that seems to have come up most is a clarity of thinking, a change in general well-being awareness, if that makes sense. But gentlemen, would you like to explain your wonderful alchemical product?
Yeah, well, I think the best thing to do is start with Stephen's backstory and how we actually got to where we've got to today. So if you want to just sort of talk a little bit about your experience and how you got the formula.
Yeah.
And then
I was actually looking for a way to alleviate and balance my chemistry. I was originally diagnosed with PTSD, along with some other labels, which for me were just based around traumatic experiences in my life. And yeah, it pretty much started from there, really. I started then looking into alternatives, natural alternatives to alleviate, I guess, some of these symptoms. Yeah. I come across a mycology book quite some time ago, and at this point I'd already been playing around with frequencies for quite some time. I was very consciously aware of the healing power and influence frequencies has on the body and various plants and fungi. And I kind of started from there, really. I studied for quite a while mushrooms specifically, and frequencies as well. I just kind of went from there, really. Yeah. And
then we got together. And I think I tried the formula many moons ago when I first met Steve. So we've only really joined our forces February of this year, but we've known each other for quite a while now. And I was actually using Stephen's formulas personally, and then I found myself referring the formulas onto people that I would be dealing with in the CBD space. So we were dealing with endocannabinoid systems, and I brought in the mushrooms into the treatment protocols for individuals who are looking for alternatives to health, not the mainstream sort of conventional ones that they'd either been on or were feared of because of XYZ. And I was blown away by the results that I got personally. I was in a dark place due to my own personal reasons. And I just found that it actually got me to a mental state that allowed me to actually function again. And not only function, go past that function and into actually optimizing myself and doing the inner work, not necessarily seeing it as a kind of cause and effect situation where I take a pill and then it makes me feel like this. The repair was not, I wouldn't say permanent, because we're always working on ourselves, but significant to where I was. And it was that gave me the confidence to say, actually, I'm quite happy to pass this on to somebody else. And then I started getting crazy results with people who were in probably, I wouldn't say the same state that I was in, but either similar or close, and even other people who were not really in a state where they needed to be repaired. They just wanted to optimize themselves. So we found that the range of people that can benefit from the product was broad. I felt really, really happy with the quality of the formulas and the results we were getting. And then Steve kind of hit me up at the start of the year saying, look, I can't do this on my own. And I was like, well, let's get together, join our forces and see what we can do. And, you know, you'll know the story from there, Clive. We really want to get this product out to people because we want to see how far it can go and what it can actually achieve for the public. Because as you say, the test samples that we sent out and tested the individual responses have been really, really good. Like not only good, like in some cases, like bring a tear to your eye and quality of life changes. We had a review that came through just recently from someone that Stephen's been working on. And again, I don't usually cry over testimonials because I've gone through that space of seeing people's life change. But this one was another one where you're like, oh my God, you know, this has been changed. This is an individual's quality of life is completely changed with just I'll say simple alchemy, far from it, ancient alchemy, stuff that we used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And was, I'm not going to go into the whole sort of politics of it, but we should never have had it taken away from us. Stephen, in his knowledge and understanding of mycology, his own personal experience, the alchemy it is all about the vibes, like the love and passion he has for that, and the end result of what it can do for others is what is going to be forming the kind of basis of our whole approach, you know. So I'm really happy.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting as well that neurogenesis was a big thing I was studying at the time of you know, frequencies and stuff like that. And originally scientists thought that neurogenesis occurred to sort of an age of 7, then it was sort of pre-teens, then it was sort of early 20s, and then they actually confirmed that neurogenesis doesn't stop occurring as long as you get the right alchemy sort of compounds within the body, good nutritious diet, and a little helping hand for some compounds can, you know, stir that neurogenesis occurring in the brain, which is the creation of new brain stem cells, which can fully mature within, you know, up to 6 weeks. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah,
it's actually an amazing topic when you get into it. It's like that old school kind of alchemic principles, and it works. You know, and that's the most important thing, because as you'll know, Clive, out there's a huge amount in the supplement industry or the nutrition and health industry that don't, you know what I mean, or they're of poor quality, or you know, not mentioning anyone, it's just the way it is. I mean, a good book is Bad Science. That's a book that I read many moons ago, and it kind of highlighted the issues that we have as consumers in what we're buying for our health, and what is actually considered okay to be able to make a claim and result in respect of what's in a product. And the levels are so low that you might not even get a benefit. So when trying the product myself, much like yourself, Clive, 1 capsule and I'm getting a result, you know, that's not common.
Let me ask you, if you were 10 bad, you know, out of a scale of 1 to 10, if when you're at your worst, you're at 10, what number were you at, and how quickly did that change happen?
I was at an 8, going towards a 9, and the change happened. It was the 3rd week of the 6-week protocol. So something to touch on is the way the product works is you get 24 capsules to a pot, and that's to last you 6 weeks. So it's 1 capsule per day for 4 days, and then 3 days off, and then you pick it up again the following week. Good to start on a Monday. If you're not too sure, start on a Saturday, have the weekend to assimilate the feelings and that you may get. And then with about week 3, the worst was over for me. The first 2 weeks were very much centered around me dealing with me, you see, and that was what the capsules were allowing me to do, was helping to balance my personal experiences, to then bring myself back to a point where I'm like, actually, I have my, external stresses and things like that, which are specific and subjective to myself. But now I can deal with those. I don't need someone else. My focus is there. And it was week 3 where I actually felt I was starting to optimize. And by the close out of the full 6 weeks, I haven't had another course in like a full 6 weeks. I use them now when I feel like I've got a stressful day or something like that's coming up, then I'll have a capsule. And it gets me through, and you find yourself in a position. I could potentially do another course of a full 6 week, 4 on, 3 off. And I'm sure that I will be feeling exactly the same way as I have done before, but I don't need it, in that sense. Like, I don't feel I need it personally. Other individuals do. Some individuals that I've worked with personally, they will use these religiously. They will have their 4 on, 3 off, and they don't stop. It's so subjective in the response that you will have, the experience you'll have. You can't say, oh, what happened with you? It doesn't work like that. It's every individual is going to have their own experience of the support that it will have for neurogenesis. Obviously, what we do know as well is the compounds within the alchemy of the product. We have some really kind of big players in there. We've got the lion's mane, we've got beta glucan.
It's the frequencies as well.
Yeah.
Like the frequencies play a huge part in all of it as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I spent a great deal of time studying and doing grow comparisons to see what the mushrooms would respond to in terms of using a frequency device. Yeah.
And the monatomic.
Yeah.
The
monatomic is another bit of hidden history that it's been somewhat kept away from us.
And the frequency controls that Steve has put into the product, that's unique. I've not seen that anywhere before, which is why I know that we've got a product that not only can we be proud of, but we're hoping to see change of life stuff, and
it's bringing that conscious awareness back to Western civilization of being conscious of the frequencies that are involved behind what we ingest and put into our bodies, I think, as well. Yeah, it's not just limited to sort of mushrooms, it's food at the supermarket, everything is for us is frequency and vibration, and it's what frequencies are behind what, that because that's something you're consuming and ingesting, you're taking that energy on,
And I suppose for the listeners at home, the frequency controlled is Steve's managed to find the right frequencies for the mushrooms to resonate and grow, better, first off in how they grow, but also we're finding that frequency control of the ingredients itself is providing a superior product. But we can't make those claims because there's no research or data around that for us to be able to say, yes, that's definitely what's happening. But we have a very exciting golden age of rediscovery, I'll call it. The golden age of rediscovery is what we're seeing in the research and the outputs and the results that we're receiving. And I'm like that. I don't know how you did it, mate, but you did it, and you've managed to bring something that gives me full confidence that we're gonna make a difference.
Now, clearly, people may get a reaction, an emotional reaction. What about on the physical side? Has anybody had an upset tummy or anything like that on a physical level?
Yes, I would say that there is still, because everything's subjective and everyone's different. Some people are like super sensitive, and tolerances could be, they might find that they might have a reaction to the lion's mane. Someone might have a reaction to the beta glucans. Someone might have a reaction to the B3, but it all comes down to the individual's sort of responsibility to know what they're going into, how to take it, making sure they're doing it right. But I'm gonna hedge my bet that that's going to be minimalized to specific cases whereby, that this isn't a product that would suit that individual. But I haven't had that yet. I mean, personally, but nausea. I have had someone report back that they've had slight nausea, but this is an individual who was on a lot of chemical medicines as well. pharmaceutical-based medicines. So it was hard to alleviate as whether or not this is because the body's doing something that it's not used to doing. Certainly when it comes to the cerebral, the neurological health, we're getting really good results in that area. No one's sort of coming back and saying, oh, I couldn't handle it, or I couldn't do this, or I couldn't do that. Even if it's like been an overwhelming experience, it's not an overwhelming wholly negative experience, you know. So it's, I think, about our individual responsibility to understand that if we're on a healing journey, that we're going to have some speed bumps along the way. I would say recommend doing, you know, it's 4 days on, 3 days off. You'll know in that first 4 days on what it's doing for you personally. By week 3, if someone's saying, look, I keep taking these capsules and they keep giving me nausea, then we would recommend, you know, just ceasing use until we figure out what it is that potentially might be causing it. And that support framework is what we're going to have in place. So people are going to have drop-in sessions. They can give us questions. I know yourself, Clive, you're going to have the support systems in place as well, so people can provide their feedback and get some guidance that makes sense relative to their situation.
So I think probably quite a number of our audience are familiar with frequencies. You know, a lot of people know about my work with Tesla type frequency devices, and probably some of them might have seen, I did put out a video about 10 years ago about monatomic elements. But for those who are unaware of monatomic elements, why do they have an effect on people first, so we can get into what they are? But what is, well, you run with that. Tell us about monatomic elements.
Monatomic elements was first discovered by a guy called David Hudson, I do believe, in Australia. Some monatomic elements is, we say monatomic gold is often what it's labeled as, but monatomic gold has every element, trace element of a whole range of metals within it. So it's not just subject to just taking sort of raw gold or anything like that. But
that's not what it is. People think you've ground down gold and people are taking gold dust. No, it's not that. It's not that.
And it has a very unique, I mean, the Egyptians used it. You know, they first, when they uncovered some of the temples, they found this white powder that was within these temples. And they fed it to the gods, and it has a very unique properties to monatomic elements, I would say. And one of the studies that's been conducted is how monatomic elements have, so in our brains, we have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. And the left hemisphere is more dominant in comparison to the right in terms of being active. So, but when you consume monatomic elements, there was a study done, and they were under, I think it might be in a CT scan at the time, and when they ingested these monatomic elements, they noticed within 30 seconds that the hemispheres of the brain were suddenly in alignment. So to give a sort of comparison, the left hemisphere would be sort of here and the right here. But upon consumption of monatomic elements, it has brought both hemispheres into full alignment, which gives a kind of I would say it's a cerebral sort of effect when consumed. Obviously, with monatomic elements, like any other compounds, you don't want to be ingesting them for, you know, abusing them and taking very high doses of any element, to be honest. It's all about having that balance and allowing the body to fully integrate it and process it, and giving the body that little bit of time to sort of get through it and give it a little bit of a break. So microdose essentially is what I'm saying. Yeah, David Hudson was quite a guy. I think Lawrence Gardner now, he kind of took over from David Hudson. You just can't find any knowledge now on the internet. Once over there was you know, quite a bit of information to dig into, but now not so much. And I think Lawrence Gardner's the sort of last remaining individual who has good knowledge around monatomic elements, and he did write a book, which I've got here for those who are interested, which is quite an interesting book. Clive, you might have heard of it. It's called Lost Secrets of the Sacred Ark. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
I've seen it in the shop, but never read it. No.
I highly recommend it. It's a really good read. And this is by Lawrence Gardner as well. And he took David Hudson's sort of research and stuff a little bit deeper and a little bit more in depth from where David had originally started. But yeah, that's a little bit on the monatomic element side.
It's essentially mono meaning singular. So it's the singular atomic elements that we need to replace through ingestion, through our diets and stuff, which have kind of been removed. I mean, I can't remember who I was talking to.
Yeah, it has over
over 80 trace metals and minerals that we don't get in our food anymore. We don't, and you don't need a lot. We're talking trace elements is enough, because that's what our body needs. That's why I think the way that Steve's developed the formula alongside the 4 on 3 off, that's optimizing. It's not about consumption, and something's going to make me better. It's not. It's about giving the body what it needs to do the functions that it's already programmed to do. It's just like a car, don't put the brake fluid in. Good luck. Don't put the fuel in, or put dirty fuel in. What do we get? We get that response based on what it is. What is the inputs?
You don't want to overload the receptors.
That's right.
As Westerners have this, it's as Steve said, it's all around consumption. But even in the mycology world, we're learning that less is actually more. It's not about overloading the receptors. It's about integrating it in the body in an efficient way, so the body can utilize it in a good way, and allow the body to break down those components and efficiently use them, which is why we recommend the 4 day on,
3 day off. Yeah. And I mean, I was looking at the studies on lion's mane specifically, which is one of our main ingredients. And it's studied to show a 60% neurite outgrowth during consumption. So 60%, it's like your brain times, boosted by 60%. So if you're having this sort of this thought ability, you're working through whatever, your daily functions or your daily duties or your job or the home life or whatever, well, wouldn't that be nice if you could increase that and optimize that by 60%? That's why we're getting this result. So, and the lion's mane is supported, as we know, through entourage effects based on, cannabis research. Entourage effect can be transferred to other products and other nutrients working together. Clive, you're an expert in what is right with what product, what supports, what do you need? There's no point having loads of vitamin C and D and everything like that and being completely magnesium deficient, because it's not going to work. It doesn't matter. You've got to have everything there in the right balance for our bodies to do what they need to do. And sometimes we're naughty, and sometimes we let ourselves slip in the fast food lifestyle that's been presented to us everywhere you go. We do need to kind of take check of ourselves sometimes and go, well, hold on a second. Let's reel this back a little bit, find out what I need, what is it that I'm missing, and get that involved. And hopefully we're getting people working on a much more balanced equity of nutritional, I say responsibility, because it is our responsibility. No one's health is not their responsibility. I think we get sort of indoctrinated into a system that says, well, if you get sick, go to the doctors. What do the doctors do? They prescribe a pill. Well, what I want is a doctor that says, well, what's going on in the home? What's your diet like? What's this? What's it? Because that's the fundamentals of health, not prescription. There's no tramadol tree. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but there isn't. And what we've got here is we've got nature's gifts through the genius of alchemy that has transpired, and I can't fault the results personally in my own personal but professional capacity as well. I'm very, very confident that this is going to make a big difference to people.
Well, yes, I am as well. So now, is there sufficient lion's mane in there to have some of the other incredible effects that lion's mane has? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so that all the ingredients interact with each other in the bloods. That's, you know, I did a great deal of time of research into neurogenesis, but not only that, looking at various compounds that would interact with the other compounds, you know, once it had entered the bloodstream itself. So like lion's mane and B3, for example, work really, really well together. You know, B3 will open up all of the arteries and stuff like that around the body. And then you've got lion's mane as well, that's coming in behind that and working. And as it goes through the blood-brain barrier, it literally lights everything up inside of that. Each individual ingredient or compound rather, you know, interacts with the other. And that they were put together in that unique formula specifically to, you know, it took a great deal of time to sort of refine this formula. It wasn't just something that happened overnight. You know, this has been in 6 years in development. You know, initially when I first created the first ever formula, there was like, I had too much B3 in there. I give it to friends and family, and you know, we were all coming out and like B3 flushes, and we're looking like lobsters, but we felt great. You know, it was like, I remember the first ever capsule I created. I think I was about 3 years in, so sort of 2 years hard study, but a year sort of practical at this point. And I was going to do a business meeting on behalf of a friend, and I took this capsule in the car. He calls me up, and I'm like, Mark, he's calling. He said, "Steve, how do you feel?" And I said, "I feel amazing. Like, I feel so good." Like, I said, "But I look like a lobster, unfortunately. I mean, you know, I've got good. I'm just bright red." And it took a good sort of 20 minutes to wear off, and I was like, "Oh, right, okay, well, you know, this needs some refining. There's a little bit too much." And as I'd given it out to sort of friends and family at this point, you know, it was mainly friends and family that were trying the capsule and having huge successes. But it seemed that everybody was coming back and saying that there seems to be a little bit too much B3 in here, Stephen, you know, we're all looking like lobsters. So yeah, I went back to the drawing board and further refined and alchemized the formula. And, you know, over the years, you know, it's certainly with mushrooms, less is more. Yeah. So, you know, it's like a lot of compounds that we ingest. You don't need to, and you don't want to be overloading the receptors because it's not getting processed correctly. So all of that data that I'd collected, that was coming back in from me just freely giving out these capsules to friends and family, allowed me to sort of refine the formula and get it to where it is today. And yeah, I mean, certainly we created a very unique, special formula for yourself, and you know, a lot of energy and time and went into that. And you know, as the years sort of went on, and I'd refined it, I got it to a very good point where you know, everybody who was consuming it at the time were all coming back, and you know, I had no negative feedback other than the B3 being a little bit strong at the start. Everybody's responses coming back were along the lines of, you know, this has really helped me deal with day-to-day life. I had, you know, all walks of life. It wasn't just subjected to people that were suffering with mental health. You know, I was diagnosed with Asperger's autism, I think it is, or an ADHD. So, you know, I gifted it out to people who had similar labels such as myself, which I'm not one to believe in labels. It's a trauma response. I've had many discussions around this. And yeah, everybody who was taking it was just coming back. And it was so beautiful to hear all of the positive feedback and the influence this formula was having on people's life, improved cognition, mental clarity, the ability to you know, be able to process, I guess, if you like, one's inner trauma, dealing with anxiety and depression as a whole. That was one of the biggest ones, was that people just felt they could just handle the density of the world and themselves, and they just felt very aligned within themselves to be and secure enough to be able to deal with stuff they otherwise couldn't manage before this capsule formula. And you know, I had really several good success stories. I had a professional boxer who I got talking to one day, and he generally thought it was a placebo effect. I give him one capsule. He went away and he calls me up 2 days later and he's just blown away. And he said, Steve, I took this capsule. I generally thought it was just a bit of a gimmick. I thought it was a bit of a placebo. And I said, well, tell me about your experience. And he said, well, I'm a boxer. I didn't tell you at the time that I do professional boxing. I said, oh, great. And he said, I took this capsule the morning I was going down to the gym to do a sparring session. And he said, I couldn't believe how much clarity this capsule had given me in my sparring session. Like my coach noticed I'd never performed like that before. He was very on his game, and yeah, he loved it. I've had police officers and paramedics who deal with very traumatic events on a day-to-day basis as well. Those guys were really enjoying the capsules as well. It was helping them to deal with the obvious traumatic dealings they were having on a day-to-day basis. And one particular woman, she was a police officer and dealt with suicides, and she was really struggling mentally to process all of the things she was dealing with at the time, and asked if it would help. And I said, well, I'm sure it will, but I also don't make any claims. And yeah, she got back to me a few weeks later, and she was, so grateful. And, that for me, it's hearing how people have taken this and that feedback that comes back, that is priceless to me, because, I can speak as highly as I like. It's very modest of me. It's my product. I've developed it, but until you've actually tried it for yourself, it's very hard to put across verbally as to the benefits of it, if you like. Yeah,
what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And the 3 days off being so hugely important. Like,
Yeah,
a lot of people that they take the capsules, and that 4 days, it's like having that. I guess if you want to use a metaphor, it's like having that crutch with the sore leg, and then the 3 days off, you're kind of getting rid of the crutch to strengthen it, and then you might put the crutch on the next 4 next 4 days. And what happens during those 3 days off is the brain does repair itself. The neurogenesis is development of new brain stem cells. We have the axon pathways, the neurological pathways that send our messages during deep traumas. We kind of give ourselves a little bit of brain damage.
One of the interesting things that happened along the journey was I had somebody with Alzheimer's. So with Alzheimer's, the neuron develops a plaque which stops the electrical signals firing across. And this particular person was quite interested. He comes from quite a wealthy background, and it was his wife he was wanting to purchase them for. And I never make any claims, but I said certainly she could benefit from it. And he elaborated that she was struggling to remember who he was and certain family members, and her sort of mental state and cognition was fully breaking down. So I sent a pot to this individual, and about 4 or 5 weeks go by, and he asked to jump on a call with me, and I was so blown away by this. And that particular individual went on to elaborate and said that his wife can now remember who he is, who certain members of the family are. It was quite a interesting transition, yeah. And he was obviously delighted. He's crying down the phone and expressing a lot of gratitude. And so after that, I then started offering it out to a couple of other individuals who, prior to that, had it expressed, whether or not this capsule potentially could be good for that. And so yeah, I got in touch with those individuals, and they had good success. Obviously, I didn't make any claims, and I just said, take the product and keep in touch and let me know how you get on. And yeah,
there are so many individual cases that you kind of want to talk about, but again, it comes down to, we can't say, we're not promising anything. We're not saying, yes, it's definitely going to do this, or this is what it is, because again, subjective experience. But put it this way, my nana's going to be on them. You know, she's got early onset dementia just now as well, or early onset Alzheimer's is what she's been diagnosed with. And I'm lucky enough to be heading over to Australia soon. And I'm bringing a pot with me. So I'm going to see what my nana's response is. And that's how much confidence I have in the safety and the efficacy of the product. Is, we tested on ourselves, they tested on, no animals were used.
In the early days, I mean, I kept a log, a journal, and I consumed the capsules. Once the alchemy of the formula was there, I consumed it straight every single day. For 6 months, and studied various different effects that it was having within myself, and then introducing a 4-day on, 3-day off was the most efficient way of consuming this formula. I had a guy who got in touch with me who was interested through a family member whose brother was hooked on hard drugs. He was on crack cocaine basically. And he expressed that I'd rather my brother, abuse something that was more natural if you think it could potentially help. And I sent him a pot as well. And he went on to elaborate that, he took more. He took 2 capsules instead of 1 a day. However,
not recommended.
Yeah,
it's not recommended.
It's not recommended, no. But that particular individual, that's what he wanted to do, and he was a hard abuser of drugs. And this guy was, his brother calls me a few weeks later and said, look, like, my brother has somewhat abused this product. He's taken 2 capsules and not sort of followed the recommended regime. But he said, I will say this: he's not touched anything since he's gone onto that formula. And again, he wanted to express a lot of gratitude and buy a few pots this time around. He had a lot of friends and family who were very eager to try it as well.
I guess we're not worried about the fact that this is going to have a very positive impact on the majority of people. I just also I want to manage expectations that we can't promise anything, in the sense of we don't know what's going to happen for the individual. We don't know if, Davey over there has tried a pot and wow, he found this and he started a business now, you know what I mean? But then, Julie over here has tried the pot and her response is slightly different, or it's not, she saw different benefits which aren't the same as Davey. If that makes sense. And this is something that we need to understand before doing it, is you're going to go on an inner journey. And when Steve was talking about the monatomic balancing of the hemispheres, if we think about left brain, right brain, and what they do, our left brain, which is our more logic and reasoning, our right being creative and artistic. If we have a right dominant brain, then we can talk ourselves into a tizzy because our imaginations are running wild, whereby balancing the left, the logic and reasoning can come in with that. If we're left dominant, where our emotions aren't being managed because we're too reasonable and logical and we're not dealing with that, then again, it can bring in this balance. So depending on which way you're swinging on the hemisphere of brain, which is dominant, if we can bring them into alignment, well, we've got a more optimized human being. They've got a more optimized brain function, a thought pattern. These, I can't say that this is exact fact, but in my knowledge of sort of neurological pathways and the damage that can be done by trauma, because some people get locked in that kind of traumatic. I can't get out of this. Well, if we think about if we've got calcified neurological pathways, which are not firing properly, well, we can get trapped in that trauma. We might feel ourselves not actually being able to process. If we can decalcify these neurological pathways, increase neurogenesis, boost out the neurite outgrowth, and then people are sort of like, actually, maybe I can process this for the last time, and move ourselves forward as progressing rather than being stasis or stuck in a kind of a trauma bond response to whatever, subjective experience. Again, everyone's had it tough, regardless of what you think of someone. We don't know what someone's gone through. If we've got this support mechanisms based on, okay, what we do know and what we've lost in our knowledge, and if we can rediscover this and get something out there that actually helps, then that's what's important. You know, let's start really focusing on something that helps.
This is the issue I had. So when I was put onto SSRI drugs, they made me so much worse. You know, I didn't feel myself. I felt, you know, I struggled as a human being with SSRI drugs, and my intuition told me there had to be a more natural way of balancing this chemistry, or a way to alleviate these symptoms that I was feeling. And I guess that was a bit of the motivator for me to reach out. I initially tried cannabis. That was my first sort of point of call. I smoked cannabis in my younger years and thought, you know, perhaps that would help balance me out in, you know, to some degree. And it didn't actually. And it didn't really help me at all. It did help somewhat at the beginning, but not. It wasn't. I didn't feel as though it was really getting to the nitty gritty, which is where, as I said previously, you know, I come across mycology, and I just started. I studied hard. Something about mushrooms had called to me intuitively, and it felt and resonated deep inside of me, and it felt like this was a path, if you like, that I was sort of being guided on. It felt very guided for me. And as I studied long and hard the various different mushrooms, and you know, eventually combining my frequency knowledge with those to manipulate the mushrooms themselves. Yeah.
It blew me away enough that I wanted involved. So I've been really impressed with not only my own personal experience, but what I see it doing for others. And it's great that I can bring a product to someone and say, here, try this. They get this amazing result, and then they look to me and they go, oh, thank you. And you're like, don't thank me. Yeah, I mean, it's thank you. You know, thank yourself. Yeah, that's because you're doing the work. You know, like, it's great. I mean, like what Steve's done in the alchemy has been is godsend, you know. But if we can facilitate access and accessibility to such product, the individual needs to pat themselves on the back. You know what I mean? Because it will be them bringing themselves out of that that kind of mental situation or stasis.
We're facilitators. Yeah, I've had hundreds of thousands of messages and people thank me, and for me, it's about empowerment of the self. You know, as Steve's saying, we're facilitators. You know, I'd often say to my clients that, you know, I showed you the door, but ultimately you went away, you did the work, you know, you integrated it in yourself. So for me, as I said, it's about empowerment, and it's making sure that these individuals are aware of that, you know, to give themselves credit, not somebody else. You know, as I said, we're facilitators, that's all, you know.
Well, very good. And I'm pleased to be able to help facilitate you to, you know, expand production and be able to get this video out to people. And hopefully we'll have sufficient production when this comes out to satisfy everybody's demand, which of course might be quite substantial.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you both so much.
Bear with us is all I can say as we're scaling up. We will do our very best to get these lines stable and reliable as well. So, and thank you very much, Clive. You've really gave us confidence in being able to bring Steve's product to the market and to speak with people, because this is new for us as well, in putting ourselves out there and saying, hey, we've got something to say and listen to. So we appreciate Clive DeCarles as a brand and as you as an individual, and Vicky as well. You don't get out of it that easy. Thank you so much to your counterpart Vicky. She's been amazing.
Well, thank you guys, and people can find the product at clivedecarle.com. Thank you so much.